Hey everybody, what the flick? Bibbs, Alonso, looking at season 2 of Sense8, episodes 6 through 9.
Yep.
The count is all off because episode 1 was the Christmas episode. So yeah, I think if we try and cover the plot on this, we're going to be here all day.
Oh my God, Sense8. One of the things I love about Sense8 is that it is every show simultaneously, and that you will have like, here's an awesome martial arts fight in a graveyard, and then here's a fabulous wedding, and they all just sort of merge together and create this wonderful tapestry. But it's a real bitch to talk about when you're trying to review it, because where do you start?
Yeah, just like in my head when I was sort of sitting down trying to kind of boil down what's actually happening here, it's like, I sound like a lunatic.
I can only imagine how difficult like
what was the pitch like?
Well, I asked the writers of like Saw 3 through 6 or 7 once, like, what was your board like? Like, you must have had like note cards, and I was like, yeah, it was like a mile long, just trying to keep everything straight because that franchise is insane. And Sense8's the same thing, trying to keep this series straight.
Yeah,
must be ridiculous, and I would kill to find out from the Wachowskis, from Tom Tykwer, James, everyone's involved, how many of these moments, how many of these scenes they find in the editing room. Because sometimes it's really important that everyone's there, and sometimes they're just cutting stuff together and, oh, these two sex scenes, they work great together. What are the odds? Like, how much of that is perfectly planned, and how often did they find something, because you can kind of juxtapose anything.
True,
and create something new.
No, that's true, and I think it was when we did the leftovers this week, I was referencing, there's a really good interview that Matt Zoller-Seitz did with Damon Lindelof on Vulture, and Lindelof talks about how, yeah, a lot of the stuff that you think is really planned out, a lot of times just, he cited the example of in the season finale, in the final season of Breaking Bad, which opens with Walter White getting the birthday pancakes and having the gun in the back of his car. Like, they didn't know at the time how the gun got into the car, how the rifle got in the car, and they just sort of worked backwards and figure it out. So yeah, a lot of times things that we might assume too much that it's all planned out. Although in a show like this, there's a lot of planning.
Well,
I mean, there's got to be.
Well, the thing with a show like this is that they're releasing the entire show simultaneously. On a television series like Breaking Bad or Lost or anything that's sort of serialized on a week-by-week basis, you usually haven't shot the whole season by the time the first episode comes out. There's some left.
But a good chunk of it has already been completed by that point.
True, but there is still some room to finagle. There's some room to mix things up.
Yeah, you're right. This is all one big drop.
This character's really popular. Let's not kill them like we were planning to. That happens a lot. And I interviewed Drew Goddard about this. He wrote for Lost, and he was talking about how you want to be able to give yourself some room to change things if you come up with better ideas. But the downside of that is sometimes your ideas don't follow through.
Sure.
So far, everything's tracking pretty well, though. In Sense8, everything is moving forward. I've noticed in this season that they kind of wrote their characters into some corners, like, oh, how is Nomi gonna get off of the government's most wanted list without doing like a huge trial? Well, okay, we'll just sort of come up with a little MacGuffin device and do that. And then in this sequence of episodes, boy, did they find a great way to have their cake and eat it too. They got to ruin a wedding just because the FBI guy didn't constantly check to make sure the warrant was still valid. And why wouldn't it be?
Sure, exactly.
Like, he was in the right, like technically. Like,
he's got eyes on her, so he knows that she and Neitz are still running around. So it's not like, why would he assume that she wouldn't be in the system anymore?
There's no reason to assume that whatsoever. I mean, that's a rough day for everybody.
There were in this chunk of episodes, I thought there were some moments that really emotionally landed for me.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that as much as this show is about like global conspiracies and like this new race of people and finding the other ones like them and
X-Men stuff,
all the X-Men stuff, they really are genuinely resonant moments with those 8 characters.
Absolutely.
Top of the list would be, I thought Lito's coming out speech at the Sao Paulo Pride Parade was really great.
How gorgeously was that filmed?
Beautifully shot. All the screens behind him and all that stuff.
That's it's like that kiss and like the kiss in The Quiet Man are like the two like most romantically filmed kisses I think I've ever seen in a movie or TV show.
Well, but I would also put it right up there, the kiss between Sun and the detective after they beat the crap out of each other. But as much as I like that moment, the moment leading up to it where Sun is in mourning and everybody's talking about their own experience, good or bad, with mothers and what mothers do and how they shape us. I thought it was really moving. Also, the death of Will's father.
Yeah.
Also very moving.
And I liked that, sometimes these things sort of come out of nowhere in a TV show and it feels like they're a cheap emotional shot. Oh, we got to do a death episode.
We'll kill somebody and that'll really get them,
But, the thing about Sense8 is that it's trying to sort of capture the whole of human experience. not just individually, although we get that too,
Sure.
but of the whole world. And that sort of tragedy, that sort of loss, trust me, I know, it blindsides you. You're going about your day, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call, and then your life has changed forever.
Yeah.
And it's brutal and it's sad, and and on top of it, he couldn't even be there.
Right.
So yeah, that was actually really beautiful, and it helped that Joey Pants was the actor because he's got so much great baggage with him. We love Joey Pants. Who doesn't? Everyone loves him. We're starting to also really delve into more of the myth of it, though. To get back to the X-Men.
Sure,
we're starting to meet a lot more Sense8s.
Yeah.
I liked the bit where they picked up the Sense8 equivalent of a sexually transmitted infection. That was a funny little bit, but it's also getting a little elaborate for me, and I'm starting to lose track of who's doing what and why a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for the end of the season for a full Angelica explanation, because at the moment she pops up and I'm like, okay, this is a thing and I know it's important to the plot and it's gonna get explained later, but at the moment I got no idea what's happening or why or how or when, even in some cases.
I get the impression that it's supposed to be like, oh, maybe she turned corrupt, but it's actually not very immediate.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of the things that are sort of mysterious about the plot are very academic. And you kind of only track if you're really writing them down. The whole thing with Jonas.
Jonas, him being alive.
Like Jonas being alive, okay, that's kind of cool, but again, we're only hearing about this stuff kind of third hand. Like we're not seeing these things happening. And a show that is all about experiencing something, leaving out someone's experiences, even just in order to keep the plot mysterious, is frustrating. And it doesn't really have the same impact. There's this really interesting Sense8 fight between two Sense8s, and some of it's great, and some of it's really comical, like when they punch each other and every one of the Sense8s lands as well. It's like an improv exercise. Like, I see what you were getting at, that really wasn't as cool as you thought it was.
But I did like the moment of, and this is almost like, I'm sure there's a video game where you do this exact thing, where there's this group of 8 people that it's like, who do we put forward against each other,
Oh yeah, it's like pick your fighter in Street Fighter. Yeah, exactly. That was really, really cool. There was a lot of really neat ideas there, but you know what I lost track of by the time everyone was fighting? I'm like, wait a minute, what's she want again? What is your plan? Like, part of me is like, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be mysterious or if I missed it, because we've still got this evil organization. We got people who may or may not be working for them. We got people who may or may not be in it for their own devices, or may or may not be all three. And it's getting a little hard to follow because there are just so many characters.
Yeah, the conspiracy gets a little thick. I think, and I could be totally wrong here, but my understanding is that Leela wants to kind of force Wolfgang to supplant guy who gave him the bar and basically become the new sort of crime king of Berlin, so that in turn Berlin can become this sort of safe haven for the Sense8s.
See, that's a good idea, but I didn't. If that's going on, they're not 100% clear about it.
Yeah, I think I could,
And I'm sure someone's paying super close attention, or they've seen the entire series by now, and they know exactly what this is, and it's frustrating to hear us talk about it. But that's one of the reasons why we don't always do a whole Netflix series all in one go.
Yeah,
it's because when you talk about it all in retrospect, you're kind of missing the immediate experience of what it's like to watch it in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think is really, really valuable, and you can do that with a larger, thicker narrative like this, is to examine what it's like to follow along at the time, in the moment. It feels that suspense. It's like a book club. You don't always read the whole book. Sometimes you read a few chapters and you talk about what you think is going to happen. And that's great, that's valuable.
I want to bring up, I get notes from Jen, who is a fan of this program and also watches Sense8, who is trans, and was talking about certain issues with the show, partially, sort of understanding the notion that the TV version of something is always the sort of scrubbed down, cleaned up. Like I've heard you and Whitney on Cancel Too Soon talk about, like, watch a lawyer show with a lawyer sometime,
Oh yeah, they'll drive you nuts.
Yeah,
nothing's right.
Exactly, so like even given that TV is going to give you this sort of like well-polished version, Nomi's trans experience, per Jen, is very much as written by two wealthy people who transitioned with fairly minimal issues in terms of finances and independent control over self and stuff.
It represents one experience of many experiences, and it represents an experience that isn't as troubled as many people have dealt with.
Exactly, and I, in having this conversation with Jen, I said, well, it's sort of like how I know a lot of gay people got pissed off at Will and Grace and Queer as Folk back in the day because they didn't see themselves in it, and that wasn't necessarily as much the fault of the shows as it was that they were the only game in town.
Yeah, you can only show so many experiences at once.
There needs to be more trans representation so that we see what people who don't have the means and don't have the circumstances, that this character go through. One thing that Jen pointed out, though, that is specifically kind of a moment in this was in the wedding toast, where Nomi tells the story about having forged the mother's signature to get the surgery and how the sister didn't rat her out. The problem with that story, per Jen, is that if Nomi was indeed a minor at the time and had forged a signature, that no reputable surgeon would do gender confirmation surgery on a minor without quadruple checking it and making sure that everything was above board. And if Nomi wasn't a minor, then Nomi wouldn't have needed the mother to sign off anyway. So it's sort of this kind of contrived moment to make the sister look better, but that doesn't scan in terms of the real situation of how this stuff goes.
Wachowski Starship, we know you're watching.
Yeah, right.
We love your work, but we'd really like to know if there's something we're missing there.
Yes.
So get back to us.
Yeah. Call
tweet me at William Bibbiani. Love to hear from you.
But again,
it's a legit complaint though.
No,
but again, because you know the specifics of it, and there's a lot of people who listen. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't pick up on that. That's really useful stuff to know.
No. I mean, I'm constantly learning about trans issues and trans stuff, and I have trans people in my life. I mean, I work at Outfest. I have, I am lucky enough that I know people who are in various stages of this whole process and how it works, and I'm still constantly learning and getting the vocabulary and getting the science, all that stuff.
Well, as well we should be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there are probably a lot of people getting it from this show, and that's great. And I think this is a great character.
It's certainly a positive representation.
Sure, but it's worth pointing out the details if for people that are watching the show, this is their window into this whole community.
I think there's a danger to try to get our facts, our science, our history, our cultural representations from media, and then obviously it informs it, and that's part of the problem. But even in a positive way, we're only getting little slivers, and sometimes changes are made by storytellers for innocent enough reasons. Maybe they have negative repercussions, but sometimes people just make changes just because they think it'll tell a better story.
I'm not putting Sense8 on blast. I'm just bringing it up. I thought it was a valid point, and I'm glad that she told me that.
I think it's a really, really valid point, and I think I'm just sort of articulating that this is a conversation we need to kind of constantly have about our art, particularly popular art, that reaches a lot of people. Because, I mean, if you look at, for example, and we mentioned about how watch any lawyer show with a lawyer, they'll pull their hair out. Watch any show that takes place in the past with a historian.
Exactly.
There's always anachronisms, there's always things that are wholly wrong, and it's not necessarily always on the storyteller to be 100% right about all things, but it is on the rest of us to not take it for granted that all of this is accurate. And I'm really, really glad that there are people like Jen, like all of the historians who write about historical inaccuracies, like everyone who sort of keeps artists in check and keeps the conversation alive and tells us maybe this is good, maybe it's bad, but it's not accurate, here's what's real. And we need to pay attention to that and not get all of our information from, sadly, even a good show like Sense8.
I do want to say though, one of the things that I love about this show is I love the globalism of it, and I love little moments like Kali realizing that that her husband's company is sending shit drugs to Africa, and how that lands on Caiaphas and then drives him towards becoming a politician.
Yeah, it's nice to see all the pieces come together.
That sense of interconnectedness. I also like that this show eroticizes a variety of people. Yeah. Like the love scene between Caiaphas and his girlfriend going on at the same time as the one with Wolfgang and Kali, I thought was really great. It was super sexy. I wish the actress playing Kali didn't feel like she had to have the nightie on the whole time. Not because I need to see boobies, but because I think that we don't get enough.
It's an illustration of intimacy.
It's an illustration of intimacy, and I think also in Western culture, in American media, we don't get enough eroticization of non-white bodies.
That's true. It does come to mind, you didn't get a chance to talk about American Gods this week. Have you seen this week's American Gods?
I need to catch up. I know I've seen the scene.
Okay, there you go. But that's another one where I was watching this wonderful, beautifully photographed sex scene between two men that lingers, and you watch it and you realize how rarely you get to see that in any media. I've seen countless heterosexual sex scenes, good, bad, positive, negative representation, whatever, and yet we see very little of any other kind.
No, it's true, and I think also like we had an interview last week. Justin Simeon, who created Dear White People, was in, and we were talking about that thing of cinematographers who need to know how to light black people.
Yeah,
and I think whoever lit that scene, the Caiaphas sex scene, like that was gorgeous, and they looked amazing. And I think that what the Wachowskis have been doing of late in Sense8, in Cloud Atlas particularly, where they really are showing us different ages and different nationalities and different, and they're going all across the gender spectrum. Obviously, I think they are. Introducing stuff into the culture that isn't there, that they aren't seeing elsewhere. And so I love that when this show kind of draws that attention that way and does it that way.
Back to the plot.
Yes.
I get everyone's names kind of mixed up because there's like 200 characters.
Yes.
It was Callie.
Yes.
Yeah, who works at the pharmaceutical company. The episode that we dropped off at, episode 9, her plot point ends with
the wedding present delivery.
Yeah, which might as well just read bomb on it. Like kind of just like, don't open this until your husband, who we have issues with, is with you.
Yeah, unless his head is in the box or something.
Ooh, well then she'll never open it.
That's true, because he'll never come home. You're right.
Like, ooh, now that's suspense. It's the hat box in the lodger. Like, but no, I mean, like,
yeah, that seemed a little, but
But again, it's every movie at once.
Sure, yeah. And that character has been created. The Ajay, I believe is his name, is so dubious, and I think even she is picking up on the dubiousness of it. That like at some point you think she would kind of call it out, but whatever, we'll go with it.
There's this one really weird plot point, and we talked about the big fight with Wolfgang and Leela. And it was cool. It was a cool fight. A couple of weird moments in it, but it worked.
But it actually did that cool thing of bringing together, like there's some fighting and there's some hacking and there's like everybody sort of bringing their stuff to the
all that stuff was great. But this one of the things that kind of weirded me out, and I actually thought they kind of, I see what they were getting at, but it didn't work. Was when everyone realized Wolfgang was in trouble, and they're like, "Oh, Wolfgang would never ask for help." He's literally walking through all of your lives, just sort of looking at you like a plaintive puppy, going, but I won't say anything.
Right.
It's like when I came home as a teenager, my parents asked, "What? Is everything okay?" "I'm fine." Slam the door. Like I didn't. It was such an awkwardly handled moment. They tried to make it seem so cool. Wolfgang just happens to be walking by and we pick up on it, but he's only doing that because it's a cry for help. It didn't really.
Straight guys, am I right?
The worst.
Articulate. Talk about your feelings, damn it. As I'm sure it strains credulity, and the Wachowskis probably even know it as people who've been around the show business for quite a while. I did enjoy the whole crazy 58 minutes of
getting
what's her face doing the
getting Leto a job.
Yes, that was right.
That was really hilarious.
I've forgotten her name too. Sorry.
Yeah,
apologies. But anyway,
too many. But like that whole bit, honestly, they're doing really, really great, and I like how they're handling Leto's career. And I like that they're treating it with a certain amount of seriousness. It's like, yeah, he came out and it's wonderful and it's beautiful and he's inspiring a lot of people. It's also hurting his career. And he actually has to deal with that. And yeah, he's taken like, I don't know, a couple of weeks or something like that just to be depressed and watch old movies and eat ice cream. And that time is to get off your ass and try to fix your career. And that's something I kind of figured they'd go to eventually, which is, okay, so if in Mexico his career is really, really injured, my God, the optics, just import him to another country and like he's this incredible story.
Yeah,
totally. Like put him on a show, put him on a reality show. It'll be fucking awesome.
And I think, it's interesting because obviously, this is a guy who is not like your Neil Patrick Harris Broadway background guy. Like he is an action star, and like heartthrob to women.
And makes a good point. There are no out action stars.
And there's that scene where the premiere and he has the love scene with the woman and people in the audience start giggling and like that. That happened. I think when Anne Heche was involved with Ellen DeGeneres and she was in that terrible movie with Harrison Ford.
6 Days, 7 Nights.
Thank you.
Which is actually not that bad a movie.
It was whatever.
It's okay. It's just not that wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't a disaster. But anyway, I remember like there was you heard about audiences sort of like shifting in their seats, and I think that again this is something that we're moving past where the society's getting smarter about. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris got to play a like womanizer on a sitcom for a long time.
Yeah, and everyone loved it.
Yeah, and so I think, yes, Leto is gonna have a next act to his career, but he's gotta figure out what that is. And yeah, it is nice they gave him a little, some moments to mope around. And even in those moments, to have Sun being like, really? This is what you got problems, you know? They call him on his bullshit, but they sort of let him stew for a bit, and then they move on. And yeah, I think he's totally going to have a career that's different, but it's going to be just as interesting.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we have to talk about in this segment before we let everybody go on with their lives.
Mr. Hoy, I'm fascinated with him, and I like I like the idea of older Sense8s, like that this has been around for a while, that there are other clusters that aren't just like contemporaries of our 8 heroes, that there's other ones out there.
It's been going on for thousands of years, so they're around somewhere.
Yeah, and the idea that the BPO started as something sort of benign and possibly even helpful, and then just sort of went the worst way, which fits into that speech that Mr. Hoy has about how, like, you know, sapiens will feed the demon inside of them and do the worst.
Oh my God, that was such a Magneto speech. That was such an X-Men speech.
Yes.
Like, this is what humans do. Not the greatest monster on earth is man. Look, and you know what? Yeah, fair play. Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
As long as we don't have, have a scene at Auschwitz with Olivia Munn in a bikini.
Oh my God. X-Men Apocalypse, why did you do that? That whole movie is such a. Anyway, we're getting off track. Sense8.
Yes.
It is the most sensational show on television / Netflix. I'm still really digging
the
it.
mass shooting. That was, I thought, really fascinating. And
topical.
Yes, and so the idea of that obviously the Whispers is out to manipulate, and there are those who want to just destroy them. There are those who want to manipulate and use them, and then there are those who are trying to sort of liberate them. And I think those are kind of turning out to be the sides here.
And it's effective to show that how those particular events, either by specific design or simply by nature of their existence, are having a huge impact on the world. And you know, you can give a wonderful speech about how we're all supposed to be together. All it takes is one jerk with a gun.
Yeah,
and completely sully that message.
And Nietzsche's dads aren't wrong. It is always dudes. So there you have it. Which is a topic that Alison Bechdel has raised in comics before. But yeah, it's a thing.
It's alarmingly disproportionate.
If you're putting up your bulletin board with a yarn on it, it's going to be a lot of men on that one.
That's true.
Okay, we have 4, 3. How many more?
I think 4.
5.
I think it's 12 or 13 episodes.
We will be wrapping up. I am going out of town, so I'm not sure when. And maybe you and Kim will do it without me. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we'll be back with this. And thank you for your patience. And we'll catch you then. Thanks.